Welcome back, artists. I'm Wyatt Paints, and today I'm bringing you part 2 of my salute to 80s sci-fi movies. I printed and painted a half-scale Predator mask with themed base. And as an extra bonus, I was asked to add battle damage and some extra blood effects. So look forward to that. I know my client can't wait to put this next to their Predator cannon, so I better grab my brushes. Let's get started. Starting with the base of the stand that I've already primed in gloss black, I'm going with an old favorite here on the channel, Cycrox Bronze. Now, a gloss primer can seem questionable, so let me explain. While usually gloss is best to be avoided in primers as it will fill in the details, I find in situations where the item will be metallic, having a gloss primer both saves me time and sets up for a smooth metallic coat. Unfortunately, it looked a bit too gold and not the copperish browns I was looking for, so I grabbed my hammered copper and sprayed that next. This solved my issue right away, giving it a darker tone, which is a good reminder for me. Sometimes my first color choice isn't the best choice, so it's a good idea while you're painting to always keep your opinions open. Be humble enough to accept that what you did earlier is no longer working towards the final look that you want for the model. Being flexible here is going to result in a better final product and also leveling up my skills as a painter. Since I was in the spray booth, I wanted to get all of my airbrushing done now, so I grabbed white gold to do the mask and talent. Quick pause warning here, as this is an alcohol-based paint, so wearing a respirator is a must. While the name of the color is gold, it's such a desaturated gold, it more looks like a slightly tinted steel. So I like using it for otherworldly metals, and I certainly think this fits the description. Now, you may notice a good amount of support marks on the underside. Thankfully, this will be displayed on a stand up on a shelf, so this side will not likely be viewable. The important part here is to put an even color back here, just in case some weird angle gives someone a peek. Sometimes it's good to make decisions like this so that you save time on areas that you can, so that time could be spent on areas that matter more in context of the final use. After all was evenly coated, I hung everything to dry. The last part to paint in the booth was the lenses, for which I employed Alclad Chrome 107. Now this stuff is kind of pricey, so I don't use it often, but I can't deny how well of a chrome effect it can achieve. It is super important to keep these coats as thin as possible. Here, I'm barely misting the lenses, followed by tons of air to quickly dry it. If you prepared the surface well, with a good sand and gloss prime, in just a few passes, you'll have a very nice reflective surface. Now, one last thing before we leave the spray booth. A bit of battle damage was requested by my client. To do it, I'll be using a tip I picked up from another YouTuber, Sergeant Digital Design, by using a rotary tool to scar the surface. If you're going to do this, be careful. This thing can kick your finger clean off, so go slow and watch yourself. To start, I wanted a big centerpiece marking of 3 slashes across the face, almost as if this predator was fighting Wolverine, which reminds me of something my diorama teacher told me in high school. Always try to build a backstory and then show it. This will help guide you to more plausible choices later on. So for this piece, the backstory is, this predator just fought Wolverine. I haven't decided who won yet, but I have an idea. Now, for the rest of these scratches, the idea was to keep them light and random and somewhat spread out. You don't want to overclump these anywhere, but you also don't want them too evenly spread out either. It'll take some practice to learn how to thread the needle on this, but the most important thing is to not overdo it. So I'm going to call it here. Before I move on to painting the details, I'd like to take a moment to thank my subscribers over on Patreon. Your continued support keeps the dream alive. Thank you. If you would like to join the painting pantheon, you'll find a link to my Patreon in the description below. And if you'd like to help the channel for free, you can always hit that like and subscribe button. Doing so will help get this video and this channel in front of more eyes, just like you, for which I can't thank you enough. I'm closing in on 400 subscribers and I'm just floored with how fast it's going. But speaking of fast, I should probably hurry up and get back. Once dry, I use shiny silver to paint in the scratches using the black as a template. To get thin scratches, you want to use the very tip of your brush as lightly as possible. The best tips I can give for this is to take a few practice strokes just above where you want to put them. Then as you continuously make those practice strokes, slowly lower your hand until you barely graze the surface. Always be sure to keep the brush strokes in alignment with the direction of the scratches or it'll look off. Sometimes it's tricky, like here. The scratch line is going top to bottom, but the direction of the scratch is going left to right. This takes a bit of practice to get good at, but it's a great tool to have access when it comes to weathering. Now for the fun stuff, blood splatter. I'll be showing 2 different ways of doing it. First up, directional small particles. For this I'll be using this fan brush, and I'll be using fluorescent green as a stand-in for predator blood. But before I start flinging paint on my model, I'm going to practice on this paper. First, load up and strike your brush on your finger just above your target like this. Notice that the flat brush produces a wider random pattern, while an upturned brush gives more of a straight line. Now, as a part of creating our story and showing it, I imagine Wolverine definitely scored first blood with a slash. So I believe the majority of the Predator's blood on this mask would have been flung there from the tips of Logan's claws. So this calls for lots of small drops with some direction, which is perfect for this application. Now, full disclosure, if you notice my green changing colors, let it be a reminder to really shake your paints well. I forgot and I paid the price. Now, it's a good idea to be conservative with blood, because you can always add a bit more, but taking it off will be much more difficult. So after a few passes, I just left it to dry. Now for the human blood. For that, I'm going to be using an old standard, Blood for the Blood God. It's a great shade that dries with a nice and sticky texture. To apply this, I'll be using a plastic pipette. I bought a bundle of these from Amazon for about $10. And they certainly do come in handy in times like this. Using this tool lets me add blood in globs and in much more life-threatening amounts like this. Also, once I get a pool started, it's very easy for me to add to it and let gravity do its work to add realism. Now, since these are much thicker applications than normal, they'll need a couple of hours to dry, but once done and assembled, it was looking pretty fire. And what do you all think? Do you have a guess as to who won this fight? I tried to leave it a bit ambiguous with the layers of blood, but maybe you see a clear winner. Be sure to let me know in the comments below. Oh, and remember when I said I used fluorescent green for the predator blood? Yep, it's UV sensitive. It doesn't show up too well on camera, but trust me, it's much more impressive in person. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to let me know by liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. And if I didn't earn your sub this time, hopefully next time you catch a video, I will. As usual, thank you for watching, stay creative, and always enjoy the process.